Welcome back everyone, I'm Karanjit Singh and you're watching What the Book KJ. Today I'm going to review I've Never Been Unhappier by Shaheen Bhatt. It's an autobiographical account of Shaheen Bhatt, who belongs to the illustrious film family of Bhatts, to which Alia Bhatt and Mahesh Bhatt also belong. She talks about her experiences with clinical depression in this book, and she was diagnosed with depression when she was merely 18, already having lived with it for some years. She emphasizes that there need not be a reason for you to be depressed. The author Shaheen Bhatt is a screenwriter and has been living with depression for almost 17 years now. Let's talk about the book now. The book opens with many excerpts from the personal diary of the author. Now, that's one of the things that not everyone can do. When we write something in our personal diary, we don't want the world to see it, but she has got it published. These excerpts range from the age of 13 to 28 years old. These excerpts are very painful in the sense that she writes about how she feels that she isn't able to fulfill her parents' expectations. She is feeling empty, sad, wants to die, and she feels like a fraud herself. She then at the outset talks about how she doesn't have much to complain about. She says that she hasn't gone through something traumatic in her childhood. She also says that she belongs to this illustrious film family, so she has this financial stability, and she doesn't have to make her way up through the ladder, and she is privileged in that sense. Then she talks about how depression is seriously misunderstood and stigmatized in Indian society. So many people in India don't even consider it as something real. They say things like, think positively. You are only doing this for attention to people who feel depressed, and fail to understand that this is a common mood disorder and a serious medical condition. She also talks about how on some days she's not even able to get out of her bed, and on other days she feels normal. She says that on some days this bed is my home, on the other days it is more like my captor. Then she talks about that phase of her life when she felt suicidal and contemplated how much time would it take for her to die if she jumped off this building. She says that she has not been suicidal now for a long time. It's just that on some days I simply wish I was already dead. She says that this feeling of her is passive, in the sense that how someone would say that how amazing it would be if I had wings and I could fly. Then she talks about her childhood. She was an angry child, a bundle of fury, and very difficult for her parents to handle, especially her mother. She also talks about her parents. Her father, Mahesh Bhatt, was already married with someone else other than her mother, but that was not a happy marriage. So and he also had 2 children. Mahesh married her mother, up and coming an actress, Soni Razdan, and after a year she was born. After 5 years, Alia Bhatt was born, and the attention that her parents gave her was divided, and she wasn't happy about it, but she was very happy about the fact that Alia, a younger sister, was born because she wanted a younger sister. And she also talks about how Alia was very cute and people were naturally drawn to her, but she was not of that kind. So she didn't like to vie for attention, and the attention really got divided, and she didn't like that thing. She says that her childhood was fine. She didn't experience anything inconvenient, but the issue started when she turned 12. Suddenly she started to feel uneasy and found herself lapsing into introspective silences, to come out of which was not very easy for her. Then she recounts an episode which happened when, just before she turned 12, she had gone to a shoot where her half-sister Pooja Bhatt was shooting. She had gone there with Alia, so there were these 3 sisters. The photographer asked these 3 sisters to come and pose. So Alia was posing very nicely, and she was also very cute. Pooja Bhatt was already she was working, so she knew how to do it. But Shaheen didn't know how to pose, and she didn't pose very properly, pose very nicely. So the photographer was not very impressed. So after some pictures were taken, the photographer requested her to that he wanted to take some pictures with Alia and Pooja Bhatt, so she should move out of the frame. She says that she really felt unhappy about it, and she also started to have body issues after that. And after some time, those pictures of Alia Bhatt and Pooja Bhatt were published in a magazine, but the picture only contained these two sisters. Shaheen was missing in that picture in the magazine, and there was no mention of her at all. And she says that she didn't. She was really unhappy about all of this. She says that all of this really had an impact on her, and then she also decided to lose some kilos, and she did. But this depression didn't go away even after she lost those kilos. So in this way, she also tries to say that. She also tries to convey this pass of this message to everyone who is reading her book, that it's not always that you have a reason that you are depressed. Sometimes it's just the mind, the chemicals in the mind that are doing things, and we are just helpless and we can't do anything other than go to a psychologist and if need be a psychiatrist to seek help. She also talks about her experiences with insomnia in this book. She says that I'd get into bed at night, lie there wide-eyed, exhausted until morning, and then get dressed and leave for college. She then says that she stopped going to bed on such insomniac nights. Instead, she took recourse to alcoholism. She was introduced to alcohol at the age of 16 at friends' parties, and she started to take recourse to that. She says that the more I drank, the less it helped. In the times I drank to escape, I did it to hide from my feelings because it was too agonizing to confront them. She then warns against inundating oneself in alcoholism. She says, because she has realized that people who are depressed and in doing so damage their lives to the extent that they become further depressed by wear and tear it causes. She says that she had read an article at a very nascent stage of her depression. She had read an article about a 20-year-old girl who had committed suicide, and the writer of the article suggested that she had attained freedom after that. Freedom through suicide. She says that this is the kind of reporting that should not be done because it romanticizes suicide, and this is one of the main features of this book, that this book does not romanticize any issues that it talks about. She talks about depression, insomnia, alcoholism, and does not romanticize about anything. Some of these addictions, some of these illnesses, and she talks about how these things are. They are sad things. They cause sadness and they cause destruction. That's how she talks about these things. Then she talks about the restrictions that the language and words impose when we want to express our feelings. She says, when describing our emotions, words can only take us so far. Yet words are all we have. So often the problem isn't with the emotions themselves, but the language we use to describe them. The drawback of using language as much as we do as our dominant method of interaction with the world, those around us, and even ourselves, is that we sometimes forget how limited the code of language is. Sadness is not created, encoded, stored, and decoded in language alone. Yet language is the only vessel through which we can communicate it, providing us with only the barest representation of our feelings. Then she also talks about the recourse that she took to psychiatrists and psychologists, and then she gives an insight into antidepressants. She says that antidepressants don't make you giddy with joy and happiness, and they definitely don't get you high like so many people think they do. Antidepressants simply make you less sad. They make your moods and your pain manageable. They help make depression feel like a controllable challenge rather than a dark, unyielding monster. There's an interesting conversation in the book that she has with her father, Mahesh Bhatt, that I'd like to talk about with you. Once they were sitting and this conversation ensued. What's wrong with me? I remember asking my father one evening, many years ago. We had lapsed into a comfortable silence during an unrelated discussion when the question came bursting out of me. Why don't I know how to be happy? My father surveyed me for a moment. And why do you want to be happy? He asked. It seemed like an absurd question. What do you mean why? I shot back. Everyone wants to be happy. Why? He pressed. I don't know. Who wants to be sad all the time? It's not normal and it's exhausting, she said. He smiled slightly. You want to be happy because society has convinced you that so-called normal people are happy all the time. You want to be happy because you want to fit in, he said simply. And why should you fit into the parameters of some made-up definition of normalcy, he continued, as my brow furrowed in thought. You are exhausted because you always are pretending to be something you are not. You are constantly trying to reach this non-existent, ideal state of emotional well-being. It's not real. You are being set up to fail. So then what should I do? I asked miserably. Take off the mask. You aren't happy. Fine, you aren't happy. One day you will be, and then you will be sad again. Accept that and stop wasting your energy chasing something that doesn't exist. You can't spend your life feeling bad about feeling bad, he said. That sleepless night, I pondered over my father's words. He was right. The more I tried and failed at being content, the worse I felt because I was failing at yet another thing. She closes the book with a lesson that she has learned from so many years of depression. She says, I remind myself, if happiness is fleeting, then so is sadness. I remind myself, depression is the weather and I am a weather-worn tree. I remind myself, even the worst storms pass. I remind myself, I have survived them all. Who should read this book? I'd say everyone except those who may get triggered by it because it talks about insomnia and suicide and depression. And some of us can get triggered by that. It's important for us to understand depression because sometimes we might get into it, or sometimes some of our loved ones get into depression and we want to help them, but we don't know how to help them. We can only help them if we understand what depression is like. This book is written in moderate level of toughness of language. I think anybody can read it easily. It also has various other beautiful excerpts from some of the books that the author has quoted from, some other books from other authors. This is my review for I've Never Been Unhappier by Shaheen Bhatt. Thank you very much for watching my review. I'll be back next Sunday with another book review. Till then, take care, stay safe.